Good morning and welcome to the Usual Suspects. I'm Steve Vancore. Well, it's football season. Games are being played, the days are getting shorter, but you know what also that means? It's beer season too. Now, why are we talking about beer on a political talk show? Because lawmakers are getting ready to come into town. And this is a less government crowd, right? And when you're a less government person, you want to push for something that inspires and encourages a strong free market. Right? And you believe, and there's really good reasons for this, to believe that that's in the best interest of consumers, in the best interest of Americans. Now, when it comes to beer, I think beer serves as a metaphor for very little government, right, but very robust outcome. Now, I'm no Adam Smith, but when you need a good, well-working free market system, you need two things. Thing one, you need an informed consumer. Consumers being given access to full information, given equal access to the products, to the services, etc. The other thing you need is a relatively level playing field for the competitors in the marketplace so that one competitor can't squish, to use the technical term, can't squish the little guy, as it were. And we have a system like that in place in Florida for beer, wine, and liquor. And it's called, ready to try to stay awake on this? It's called the three-tier system. Sounds boring, but it's a really important thing. We're going to talk about the three-tier system today, why it works for you, the consumer, why it helps you when you walk into a convenience store, when you walk into a Publix, a Hoggly Woggly, a liquor store, you see this incredible variety of products. Everything from the darkest stout, chocolate stout, peach pumpkin ale, to a light lager that you can enjoy a few beers while watching the game. Now, what's important to understand, it doesn't have to be that way. If you've been to places like Costa Rica, if you've been to London, you know they have limited selection, they have limited variety. If you go into one restaurant, they may only carry the Bass line of products or the Guinness line of products, okay? I remember going to Costa Rica, which I love, and going into a grocery store, mostly empty shelves in the beer aisle, and only 3 or 4 types of beer. Same thing in their local restaurants. The three-tier system is in place to ensure, look what we have here just in this market. We have great brewers like Ology, Proof, Oyster City, etc. We're going to talk with Ken Daley of the Florida Beer Wholesalers Association and Tri-Eagle Sales about the three-tier system and why it works for you. Stay with us when we come back. Thanks for staying with us. I'm Steve Vancore. We're talking about everybody's favorite subject today, beer. Ken Daley, thank you for being with us. Appreciate you coming on.
Happy to be here.
You were serving 2 roles. You're the president of Tri-Eagle Sales, which Ocala, Gainesville, Tallahassee area.
Correct.
But also as the chair of the Florida Beer Wholesalers Association. You intrigued me when we were talking before the show about Prohibition. And it doesn't seem relevant to today. It was almost 100 years ago, but it's an important component of why we now have a system in America, and especially in Florida, that guarantees the widest variety of beer types, beer pricing, etc. Tell us a little bit about what you were saying before.
Yeah, well, you know, everybody likes to focus on what they're looking at in the present, which is, you know, incredibly relevant, right? That's what the lawmakers, as you mentioned on the way in, are going to be facing. You know, what are they looking at today? What are the problems of today? What needs to be modernized today? All relative to the regulations that are in place in the alcoholic beverage space. But before you can start really talking about what you would want to change, whether it's a tweak or whether it's a teardown, you got to know why the system is there that you're talking about playing with.
Yeah, what
right?
was broken before that you fixed?
Yeah, and how did it get there? I mean, very few people really pay a lot of attention to the history and have enough curiosity to go deep enough to say, you know, why is this here? And so you say, oh, we're against regulation, and therefore this three-tier system is regulation and it needs to go away, right? The three-tier system is actually a deregulated spot, right? As you mentioned,
we had the ultimate regulation.
The ultimate regulation is prohibition, and no other consumer product, period, has ever been outlawed by constitutional amendment and then allowed back in the country after about a 13-year failed experiment by constitutional amendment. You know?
It's important to remember, during that failed experiment, you had people dying from moonshine and other products that were made in the black market, as it were, killing people, and it really didn't do away with it. It just wasn't safe anymore.
No, that's right, and it's another thing that you have to think about, which is the second order consequences, right? I mean, they thought, okay, we're going to solve the problems of the day that we saw with respect to alcohol, and there were numerous problems before Prohibition, and then all of a sudden, for 13 years, they had a whole new set of problems, right?
Right.
And so the three-tier system is actually a deregulated state from Prohibition. You can't call it anything but that, right? I mean, clearly, it allowed the alcoholic beverage sales back into the United States of America. It solved for many problems by giving the rights to the states rather than the federal government to control alcohol. You know, it rested those rights back in the states. Interestingly, all 50 states have a three-tier system. You know, everybody, they didn't like all get together, you know, in one big conference room.
It's the one that works the best.
Yeah, in 1933, they weren't all sitting down saying, how can we all get together and do one, right? But there was a lot of study about what was going on with alcohol. What were we trying to accomplish, right? What was the goal of regulation that would allow the products back in the marketplace that would hit that thing that you said a second ago, the level playing field, bring fairness to the marketplace, and also give credence to the fact that the alcohol is different. You know, I mean, there's a reason soda was never treated that way, right? And because, you know, drinking sugary carbonated beverages is a different thing than alcohol. And so alcohol required a different temperance, right? That was the movement before Prohibition, was a temperance movement. There's some temperance built into the three-tier system. There's some social control. There's some, but not just some, tremendous level playing field. You know, you couldn't have said it any better when you talked about the small craft brewers that are proliferated across not just Florida but the whole country.
I mean, it's
there are
like
5,000 or so craft brewers.
Just in Tallahassee, I think we have now 5.
Yeah, exactly.
And we have another debate going on this week about somebody who's building a development on the south side and has his own distillery.
Right.
Okay, and that's when the free market works best, is when you can allow new entrants into the marketplace. I may love the suite of beers from Ology, you may love the suite of beers from Proof, but the beauty is they're in the marketplace competing, and the consumer drives that competition because they have access to this wide variety of products.
Yeah, absolutely correct. That's right. So again, yeah, I mean, it's kind of just the birth of the three-tier system. You know, has multiple elements that the biggest rocks, right? The big rocks. You know, and it provides that level playing field. And what you see 90 years later, you know, it's about to be 90 years. On December 5th is the 90th anniversary of the repeal of Prohibition. And so there are more beers available in the state of Florida today than there have ever been at any point.
So you're part owner of Tri-Eagle Sales, right?
Not an owner, but happy executive of the company.
Okay,
right?
So happy executive.
Yeah.
How many different beers does Tri-Eagle carry?
So brands of beers, 450 brands of beer.
Oh my God. You know, it could be like a trivia question. Can you name more than 50 types of beers? I'm sure avid beer drinkers could, but I don't think I could.
Yeah,
450
and
brands.
Look, we only have, you know, we're 50% of the market. If you just use 50% of the market share, you know, there's another distributor that in our marketplace. There's at least one. There's certainly more than one other distributor. There's well over 1,000 brands of beer in the market.
Certainly enough choice, right?
Right.
So what I want to do when we come back, I want to talk specifically about what distributors do. There's all the services they provide to allow this free market to exist. How you help new entrants get into the marketplace, how you evaluate them, how you support them, how you help them make sure they get their products before consumers. Because to me, ultimately, that's what levels the playing field, is that when you have a middleman, a middle group, as it were, supporting those new entrants into the marketplace. Stay with us when we continue on talking about your favorite subject, beer. Thank you for staying with us. We're talking about the three-tier system in beer and why you can walk in preparation for game day. You could walk into any store in Tallahassee or surrounding areas and find an incredible selection of beer. And it's not like that in other countries. It's not like that in other parts of the world because they don't have the magic formula in many respects that we do, called the three-tier system. So Ken, I want to talk about that middle tier. Everybody loves the middleman, right? Every time somebody wants to cut, let's cut out the middleman.
Cut out the middleman.
What role do distributors actually play on a day in and day out basis to help level the marketplace, help these new entrants into the market?
Yeah, you know, I mean, I'll riff on that middleman thing for just a second because you're dead right. When you talk about the whole system, the thing that sticks out the most that people start saying is wrong is the middleman. I mean, you can't have beer without the producer. Right? You got to have a brewer.
I have a brewer.
I can have the beer, right? You got to have a place where you can buy it. You got to have retail, or you're not going to have any kind of marketplace at all.
So why not go directly from brewer to retail?
Right to the middleman, right? So for all you middle children out there in the world, right? You got a big brother that beats you up, and you got a little sister that gets all the love, and you're the middleman, and that's us. And for 25, going on 26 years, I've been a middleman in distribution. But you know, I'll use a different analogy here, in that if you want to make a stool perfectly rock solid, you need 3 legs. And you take one of those legs away, and what do you have, right? You got this thing that you're going to fall off of. The middle of the three-tier system, of course I'm biased, Steve, but the middle is what brings the whole thing to life. So let me answer the question directly. You asked, what do we do, right?
Yeah.
So we don't make anything, right? We buy beer already brewed, packaged, palletized. We pay for it to get from the brewery to our warehouses. We store it in a controlled, temperature-controlled environment. We have 2 warehouses in Florida, one in Ocala and one in Tallahassee.
They're massive.
All the distributors
they are
like us.
Incredibly massive.
Yeah, you know, they're anywhere between 75,000 to some distributors have 200,000 square foot facilities where they keep all of what we call packaged beer, bottles and cans, at one temperature, and they keep draft beer or anything that's not been pasteurized by the brewer has got to be held in the mid-30 degree temperatures so that it maintains its integrity.
But you work. So if I'm a local brewer, you'll work with me to help me find the best market, the best distribution.
Yep.
What the consumers want.
Yeah, the simplest part of the pipeline is just, okay, the beer comes from the brewery to us. We get it closer to the retail market. We then before we even sell the first case of beer, we build a plan with the brewer. We have 75 brewers that we call, our
Your
partners,
wow.
if you will. Yeah,
75.
75 of them, and every single one of them has a plan to get their product to the market.
And in this area of town, they tend to be more, let's say, a blue-collar, light beer, pick up a 6-pack on the way home from work kind of drinkers. Over here, you have more of a college crowd that's interested in the peach pumpkin ales kind of thing.
Absolutely, yeah. It follows the consumer, and then it follows the mission of the retailer, right? So some retailers they've got a great consumer base that are very craft-centric, if you will, right? They love all the wide variety of crafts.
You handle the ordering, you handle the cleaning, and in bars you clean all those taps to make sure they're sanitary, make sure they're taken care of across
it's our
different
responsibility.
brewers.
Let's hit it from the ultimate objective. It's our responsibility to make sure that every consumer that gets a beer gets the best and highest quality beer that they can possibly get. Beer relies on freshness as its #1 quality attribute.
Really?
Right? The fresher the beer, the better. If anybody ever visits a brewery, what's the greatest thing they ever did? They drank the beer that was brewed that day, right?
Yeah,
it's like, oh man, the beer was what? It was made today. The freshest beer is the best beer. And so packaged beer, bottles and cans, go a great distance to making sure that brewmaster's goal of a fresh beer makes it all the way to the consumer when they pull it out of their cooler or their fridge. Draft beer is a different story because it's going to come in a big keg. It's got to run through a line and a tap and into a glass. And we want to make sure that every piece of that is clean.
And that's the responsibility of the distributors.
It's our objective, absolutely. It's our commitment to our suppliers. We make contractual commitments to our suppliers
to do those
to make sure that those things are done, and that the beer that reaches the consumer's lips is that out of the brew tank, fresh taste, high quality.
So what I'm most interested in here is this middle layer, the giantest, is that a word? The largest of brewers,
I know what you mean. Yeah.
the largest of brewers, the newest of brewers, the Peach Pumpkin Ale brewer, the Ologies, the Proofs, the Oyster Cities of the world. And I'm sorry if I'm missing somebody that's somebody's fan favorite, but they get a level playing field because everybody has to go through the second tier, which is the distribution, and then you handle it so that the big brewer can't go to the retailer and say, only carry my beer and I'll give you a really good deal. Correct. They can't go to the retailer and give them rebates for selling certain products so that the local brewer gets put down underneath the shelf and the big brewer's stuff is on big display with a big sale sign. You guys manage all that to ensure an equal playing field for the little guy.
That's correct. We manage it, and part of what we do to manage it is we comply with the regulatory system that has control elements that other consumer products don't have. I don't want to just pick on soda. I'll pick on snacks, and I'll pick on soup, and I'll pick on any other basic aisle in a grocery store that you can walk down, and you'll find that you see maybe 2 or 3 basic brands. Never will use. Could just go stand at the beer case and look at how many different packages and brewers are represented in that space.
But you bring up a good point, because alcohol has a tendency to be abused. You need to kind of govern and restrict a little bit into the market. You can't have free beer. You can't have really super cheap beer because you will, studies show unequivocally, price is a deterrent to abuse, right? And what you are showing is 2 things. One, that the beer is safe. We don't have wood alcohol problems anymore. You don't have people going blind from drinking moonshine, et cetera. But also that it's available, and you have this wide selection and incredible variety that is brought about by the 3-tier system.
That's right. And really what it's brought about by is the people of the distribution tier. And by the way, thousands of employees for all the distributors.
People talk about good jobs.
They're trained. We have incredible longevity and tenure with our people. They know what they're doing. They are the ones that bring the 3-tier system, so the retailer never has to worry about it, and the brewer really doesn't have to worry about it.
And by the way,
stewards of all of this is the
if I'm a restaurant, I don't want 37 brewers coming to my back door selling me beer. I want to deal with 1 or maybe 2 distributors, and not have to mess with 37 people coming to my back door going, hey, I got a keg here, and then also you don't know if they're going to be able to deliver a keg tomorrow. One of the roles you guys play is to make sure somebody has a good business plan to produce the necessary volume to distribute it to here or put it over there.
Absolutely, feeding that product back up. And when that retailer does say, hey, a buddy of mine just said they wanted to try whatever brand, and they say to our sales rep, can I get this? And we say, absolutely, we can get that for you. You know, we've got the relationships with the brewers, and we've got either the product in stock or we'll get it for you. And imagine getting a keg of beer from a brewery in Miami to a bar in Tallahassee, and I mean, who would do it?
And it happens every day.
Who would do it? Who would do it? Who would pay the money to transport a keg of beer,
1 keg,
from Miami to Tallahassee, right? I mean, yeah, you couldn't possibly do it, or you're going to spend $100 a glass of beer. So
yeah, exactly right.
We bring that to life.
Sometimes it seems that way. When we come back, you guys did something really special after the last hurricane. I want to talk about that when we come back. Good community servants at Tri-Eagle Sales. Stay with us when we come back. Thanks for staying with us. You know, this area just suffered the ravages of a really bad hurricane. For those of you who live in Tallahassee or west, if you haven't driven east on I-10, that's all you have to do. Once you get east of Jefferson County into Madison County, you see the devastation of the storm. I've been working with 2 different groups that did incredible things. The first was the Second Harvest Food Bank in Feeding Florida. You know, you don't think about it, but people need to eat, and they need to be able to have some water because they don't have electricity, they don't have their homes, they don't have whatever. They sent in trucks coordinated from all over the state to bring in fresh food products, meals ready to eat, etc. But another group that you probably don't know about because they don't do direct-to-consumer sales is Tri-Eagle Sales, Ken's organization. So Ken, you guys did something, I'm astonished because you don't really have to do it, but you guys bottled up. Well, tell me.
Well, so yeah, it's not astonishing to us, Steve. First of all, the roots of it are in Anheuser-Busch. There hasn't been a disaster like Idalia or Ian last year, or any of these natural disasters, where Anheuser-Busch has not come straightforward with drinking water for the local devastated communities. And it didn't just happen like, oh, hey, what should we do? We were talking to Anheuser-Busch days before Idalia hit. We knew that they had produced 100,000 cans of drinking water, had them staged and ready to send to us so that immediately after the storm passed, they could get them to our facility, and we could then coordinate with local, we used the Red Cross to get that water immediately in the hands of the people who need it. So not only did we have, I mean, clearly we got a big parking lot and a place to bring a truck into, right? But it took a half a dozen or more of our people who at the same time are trying to make sure that we're servicing all of our customers and taking care,
right,
of what we need to do with our business as just our business model, who were ready and able to get that water where it needed to go so that the local authorities could get it in the hands of the people who needed it.
That's so cool. That's so cool.
Yeah, we're always incredibly.
So they provided the water, you distributed it.
That is correct.
A three-tier system at work.
Three-tier system at work.
Works
absolutely,
good.
Yeah.
Well, Ken, your knowledge of the subject is fantastic, and I love it. I loved your offline analogy about we have fences. We sometimes don't know why that fence is there. We tear it down and learn too late why that fence was there. And the best fence we have is the less regulated model of the three-tier system. Thanks for staying with us. We'll see you next week on The Usual Suspects.